No, I don't want to leave the studio. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to the What the Fuck. Now, we're probably saying what the fuck for all kinds of different reasons. So tonight we're saying what the fuck because we really don't know what the fuck we're doing with technology. So welcome both. What the fuck? How how are you? How am I finding you both this wonderful evening?
Tired but good.
Right. Okay, Siobhan. I want more than just a shrug. It just
All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, fine. You feeling what the fuckish?
Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot to talk about, don't we?
We certainly do. We certainly do.
Yeah.
So I think it might be useful just to sort of dip in, just explain to people very briefly what Square Pegs is all about. So Square Pegs is something that we set up because there's a real belief that people with any kind of malady in the UK, whether it's a disability, whether it's a mental health problem, services aren't really meeting our needs. And any services, a lot of services are set up, they're being set up from the top down. And a lot of people just aren't being served. A lot of people just don't get the services they need or deserve. So what we were doing by doing several things, including this here, what the fuck live stream, is reaching out to people to find out what people think of their situations. We want to hear about you. We want to hear about your situation, and we want to hear about what's important to you. So that's the general goal. So what we've started doing after, I mean, last week we told you a lot about what Square Pegs is about. So I'm not going to bore you shitless with that further. So this week we're
No,
talking
we're not
about.
actually we're not actually live on anything.
We're live on YouTube.
Oh, okay, but we're not live on anything else.
You are kidding me.
Nope, nope. Let's just checking. Yeah,
I
I
have
think
to check.
YouTube's the only one.
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah,
You
I'm
were
going to
talking.
interrupt you. Talk
I
about
didn't want to stop.
Oh, I know.
So all right, we'll make do with being live on YouTube. At least we're live somewhere.
Well, yeah.
That's
People sitting waiting on Facebook, unfortunately. Yeah.
okay. Okay. Right. All right. So for the people who are here, we are talking about the supposed overdiagnosis of ADHD. So a lot of the government and a lot of the NHS has been around the place saying that ADHD is overdiagnosed, and we've found evidence, certainly in Scotland, that might suggest the opposite to that. Now, guys, I've set that up. I'm going to vanish into the background and guddle about and see if I can reconnect us with things that we're not currently connected to. So I want you two good people to start having a conversation about the overdiagnosis of ADHD. So, what's happened in Tayside, for example? Back in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. So there's kind of this rhetoric going around that ADHD has been overdiagnosed, and we obviously have seen some stuff in the media. It's kind of blown up a bit, hasn't it? And yeah, Tayside kind of is basically there's kind of a lawsuit that is pending against them because for the past, I think it was 3 years, they haven't actually been diagnosing anybody with ADHD as a sort of standalone condition. They've only been doing assessments for people who have other sort of conditions. So yeah, this kind of rhetoric that it is overdiagnosed is basically ridiculous. And then yeah, Chris kind of done a bit further sort of speaking to people. And yeah, it turns out that actually this is a sort of across Scotland sort of policy, which is quite scary actually. And I also then found some other stuff in regards to sort of NHS England as well, which kind of follows a sort of similar pattern. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, what were your kind of thoughts on it, Alson?
No, I didn't. I was just about to ask within Scotland, how long has that been a policy for? Has that been for the last 4 or 5 years, or has that been a longer policy?
I don't know, Chris. What I know you're kind of like guddling about there, but like, you know, how long, or is this just new because of obviously this? I guess there's a kind of boom, I suppose, in people going for assessment, but the actual like diagnosis is it's not actually happening. Is that something that's new that they've decided this is policy, or
Right. Okay. First of all, you naysayers, we are live on X. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Facebook. It just we're 10 seconds behind or thereabouts. I haven't looked at Substack, but let us pray together. So, what were we saying about the overdiagnosis? So we've got more people than none. So I'm gonna take that as a win. So we're talking about the overdiagnosis of ADHD, which clearly just isn't happening. If you're not diagnosing anybody, then you can't have an overdiagnosis. I spoke to a psychiatrist who exists up the way, and they were telling me that this isn't just Tayside policy. This is Scottish policy. I was speaking to Sim earlier on and saying, but who makes this decision? And it has to be management in the NHS. And how could you possibly make that decision to go? So I think that's something to keep on the back burner. But I think because we've got
I've got some kind of statistics actually, which might help put this into a bit of perspective.
cool.
So, I was doing a sort of bit of digging, and obviously these stats are kind of, some of it is obviously because obviously all the health sort of NHS areas are also different with Scotland, England, Wales. It's obviously a sort of estimation, because obviously they do their stats differently for each country. So don't take it as gospel. It's just what they estimate. So there's around 69 million people in the UK.
Yep.
Which of 50 to 52 million are adults.
Okay.
How many of those 50 to 52 million adults do you think they are estimating have ADHD?
I can say maybe 2%, so a million. Million people?
Okay. Any fancies?
1.5%.
Yeah. So the UK NICE guidelines indicate that around 3 to 4% of those adults have
Okay,
ADHD. So
okay.
1.5 to 2 million. Now,
All right.
so that's what they can estimate, have ADHD. What about those that are actually formally diagnosed? Out of those 1.5 to 2 million, how many do you think?
0.7%.
So, are you saying that there's a percentage of people just self-identify as having ADHD?
So this is based on, it's basically sort of self-identify and sort of research another area.
Sure. Okay, right. I reckon it'll be a third. So a third of that 2%. So of that 3%. So
So they say so only about 1 to 2% of those are actually formally diagnosed.
okay.
Whether that's NHS or private. So that works roughly around 15,000 to 40,000 people, adults. This is also just
Okay.
this part,
All right.
which is actually a very small number when you think about it.
It's much fewer than we're told, I think, or come to believe.
So yes, we know that there are people out there absolutely that are undiagnosed, but the actual this rhetoric that it's overdiagnosed is absolute nonsense because.
So me talking about millions, it's at the most hundreds of thousands at the
for
very
formal
most.
diagnosis, So
Criminy Bob.
yes, so this absolute nonsense that this is overdiagnosed because those stats say absolutely different.
That's wild. So, right, you're a politician suddenly. Um, what's your motivation?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I just,
Clickbait, social
it's
media.
crazy, yeah. It's just that, I think, no, I think actually just when the stuff that I kind of obviously looked at earlier, I mean, in regards to, I guess, money. It all comes down to money, doesn't it?
But I don't know. It just seems weird. What money? I mean, how does targeting an infinitesimally small percentage of people save money? Um, are they saying these people should be in work? Are these people should be in education? Are
I
they?
think, I think what, I think what's kind of happened is obviously, and this is something that absolutely baffles me because the more we do research, the more evidence that we have. Like, what are you going to expect people to do? They're going to present. They're going to become more self-aware. You
Yeah.
know, because this is out there. There's more awareness around it. So they're going to go and question it, aren't they? And this is it's like, but we're being pushed out. Actually, no, overdiagnosed and overdiagnosed. I think more so in terms of the private side of things. But what actually is happening is it's not the overdiagnosis. It's obviously the increase for people wanting assessments because they're more aware of themselves.
Oh, right. So that's costing money, and that's bringing the NHS to its knees because people want to know what's going on for them. Um,
That's part of what they're pushing. Yeah, trying to push, which is it's quite bizarre.
so I mean, uh, I know I'm leading the witness here, but I I feel we need to talk about misdiagnosis because what happens to people who, and very often women, for example,
Yes.
who aren't diagnosed with um,
Yeah.
a ADHD, for example.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose thinking of my own experience, yeah, the I guess the kind of why the sort of misdiagnosis because there is a bit of an overlap, I suppose, in some certain conditions, in terms of symptoms, criteria, that kind of thing. I think also the fact that having been through obviously the assessment process now for ADHD autism, the actual assessment process is very lengthy. It's very, it goes into a lot of depth. It's a lot of appointments. It really goes back to obviously childhood and kind of what was going on. So obviously the fact that that takes so long as well, it then there'll be lots. They're not able to put the time into that. A lot of these kind of professionals, they're overrun with other things, so they're just kind of thinking, well, we need something, a quick fix, a quick, this is what you've got, rather than actually delving into it further, and actually looking at the history, and I think a lot of it as well, especially females, when you think about ADHD and autism, the early research was all focused almost entirely on males.
You surprise me.
It's all
Misogyny in healthcare? What? Okay,
yeah.
right.
And I think obviously females have you'll hear masking, the whole masking kind of quite a bit. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's our us kind of surviving that world, what we were wasn't built for us, and trying to adapt to that world. And I think that's when obviously a lot of things got missed.
So, what happens to undiagnosed ADHDers in early life? What?
Yeah, I mean, I guess thinking about trauma, we're kind of exposed to a lot more trauma. We're kind of exposed to trying to fit in with what's expected of us, not being able to actually be ourselves, kind of find out actually who we are, kind of and flourish. and then we kind of keep all that inside. We just keep all that inside. And just get chronically invalidated, and I think for me it got to a point where I couldn't keep that in anymore. So then the outwardness, I suppose, of what was going on, it all came out, and that's where we started to think about misdiagnosis as well, because these outwardly presentations, are then seen as kind of something else. And obviously, in this case, my case, I guess, borderline personality disorder was something that was slapped on me.
But before that, even, I mean, and that's shit. I mean, I've got to say, it's a shit label to be stuck on anybody. But before that, you're just badly behaved, aren't you? You're naughty. You're
Kind of naughty. Just don't listen. Don't sit still. Kind of just
so. How did, I mean, if you're okay talking about it, but how did teachers treat you? I mean, what did they?
I mean, I was sent out of class. I was kind of often, I had detention. I was just told that I was just being a nuisance. And this was often obviously situations there where I was basically being forced into to try and sit still and do my work, and it just wasn't, I wasn't able to. It was hard, and I think especially things that weren't interesting to me, to try and focus and concentrate on stuff.
Quadruply hard.
Yeah, and then it was a case of, I actually remember a teacher told me that I wouldn't amount to anything.
That's a hell of a pep talk. I mean, you want somebody like that running your football team, don't you?
So it was.
I'm gobsmacked. I'm really gobsmacked that teachers must know the effect that their comments must have on children.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like, though, as well, that if you, and I remember having this conversation actually recently with someone, that if you didn't kind of fit into that mould that they expected of you at school, so the typical kind of well-behaved, that was doing all their exams, kind of was then going to go on to university, was going to do this, and kind of that typical sort of school transition that they think is the perfect kind of sort of package. If you didn't fit into that, you were kind of it was just sort of invalidated. You weren't seen, you weren't heard, you were just a nuisance. We don't have time for you. That is exactly kind of how it felt, and I absolutely hated school, because that was just. We're getting that part of it, and then I got the part, sort of being bullied by the school kids because I appeared to be different to them. I didn't fit in with them. So you had these both sides.
But of course, the school had zero tolerance, because all schools have zero tolerance, and you were well protected, and they sorted that out, didn't they?
Oh God, like I don't know how many times my dad especially was up at the school, because I'd went home crying and kind of upset, or I even was attacked a few times as well by people at school. But no, the school had zero tolerance on bullying. Bullying did not exist in their school.
I mean, this is it's bizarre. So how did they navigate round? So you're being bullied. Your dad's coming into school. What were they saying? You've just made it up, or you're a wrong 'un.
I don't know. I never actually got kind of told about how those conversations went or what happened.
Sure.
But it was just, it didn't make any difference. It still continued.
Wild. I mean, what happens? So some people at school they have it leveled at them because they don't mention it to the parents because they're too embarrassed that they don't want their parents to make a noise. And what you're saying is your dad came in, made a noise, and fuck all happened.
Yeah.
And that's why you became an absolute academic failure. Only you failed at being an academic failure. So
Yeah, I think for me it was, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. But again, that was a kind of, when I think back as well, again, I think there was that sort of, okay, well, this is what I need to do. There's expectations. This is what they want me to do. Yeah.
So you left school what with some qualifications?
I had some, and I went to college and done all
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But yeah, you went to but you excelled. You've got. I mean, you're almost a three-piece band. You're the 2 degrees. So that's impressive for somebody who didn't like school and was getting treated badly. But
I think that's that's quite important that kind of mentioned that as well, because I've found, and from speaking to other people as well, that that's actually used against them in terms of going for. It is when they sort of
yeah,
I honestly heard of people
yeah,
went for
yeah.
ADHD autism assessments that, oh well, but you've got degrees, you went to college, you did this, you did that. Like, how could you possibly,
It,
It
it,
doesn't work like
it,
that.
in what other walk of life would your high functioning sound like an insult? It's absolutely clonkers. So you were talking about the borderline personality disorder label, and as I recall, that was very sensitively dealt with by the powers that be. They did it in a very open, honest way, and they offered you. Or have I just got that wrong?
That is what should happen.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's definitely not what happened in my case. I guess I think from so going through that sort of being a kid, school, leaving school, doing college and stuff, you learn to kind of navigate the world, but to your own detriment, because despite me not really being aware of kind of knowing what was going on there, I always did think that there was something there, that I was that
Yeah,
for
yeah.
other people, and I kind of was carrying that all inside, and then a lot of changes happened in my life, and then I ended up going into this burnout, and I ended up I did have a mental breakdown.
Right.
Um,
What does a mental breakdown look like? I
so
mean, again, only if you're okay talking. Yeah.
for me it was I became incredibly suicidal.
Right. Right.
I became incredibly suicidal, and I just could not see a way out. I just couldn't cope with everything anymore. I think
Do you think it was a culmination of masking all that time that suddenly?
I absolutely believe that. Yeah, the majority of it was that. Is that trying to kind of fit in and kind of just do what's expected and be part of society in a way that is seen as being just how you're supposed to be. So
Please let me fit in. Please let me fit in. I'll be a good girl.
yeah. So I think a lot of it was that, and
Fuck.
just not being able to, I guess, understand how to, I guess, deal with emotions. I think obviously one of the big things again that kind of links, where it's a sort of crossover ADHD, autism, and BPD is obviously emotional dysregulation. And that wasn't something I was ever taught anyway. Emotions wasn't really a thing that was spoke about, or so I had no idea what these emotions were, or how to deal with them, or how to deal with certain situations. I didn't have the tools and the skills, and I just fell apart. And yeah, I guess so that was back in 2017. And then it's been a hell of a ride since then. I spent 4 weeks in hospital, because I couldn't keep myself safe. I was then they talked about me having depression at that point. Chucked me on antidepressants.
So when you went into hospital, were you sectioned or did you go in voluntarily?
No, it was a voluntary thing.
Were you one of the people that if you tried to leave the hospital, though, they would section you?
I mean, I don't think I ever tried to leave though. To be fair.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that I've come across that case a lot of times, and you just think, well, that doesn't sound terribly voluntary to me.
No, it
But
wasn't. It wasn't a case of that. I mean, they did have that 72-hour
sure.
hold thing, or whatever it was that they called it,
Okay,
probation
okay.
thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
no, it was. I think I needed to be somewhere that I could be safe because I wasn't. I wasn't able to keep myself safe elsewhere. So yeah, that was an interesting time. And then yeah, obviously I had kind of 4 weeks there. And yeah, obviously then discharged and had a CPN, which was
As a community psychiatric nurse, too.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah.
No, don't worry. Don't worry.
So yeah, that was a bit of a waste of time. I think the
Okay, waste of time. They welcomed you into their loving arms, and they did therapy. Obviously, when you were in hospital, they did therapy, and
no,
I'm getting a feeling that this world of mental health care isn't what I what. So CPN, what did they do for you?
I mean very little if I'm honest with you.
Did they visited you at home? Did you visit them?
No, I
What
had
did
to,
that look
yeah, I
like?
had to go and do, I had to go to these appointments, and it was just like me to sit in this room. How are you doing? And that was it. That was pretty much it.
That sounds
Um,
intense. Crikey.
I'm like, why? And I think I ended up stopped going eventually because I was like, this, like, I don't understand what's going on here. Like, and then there was talks about, being referred for psychological therapy.
Mm.
But they then, they actually sent a letter to an address that I hadn't lived in for years. So I never ever received that. So then I was basically struck off things, off lists and whatever.
Well, I mean, this is clearly you not engaging with services. I mean,
Rambo.
any normal person, Siobhan, would be looking at every single address they'd ever lived at to make sure that they weren't being struck off by mental health services. It's unacceptable. I mean, the whole thing is unacceptable. And
But
then,
I only found this out though, and this again, so kind of touch on this a bit in a bit as well. But
yeah,
I only found out that had been sent to the wrong address when I had requested all of my notes, because obviously there was a copy of it with that address on it.
what triggered you? I use that term advisedly, but what to order your mental health notes?
Yeah, so I mean, prior to actually going into that hospital at that point, I was treated horrendously by,
Sure.
sort of crisis team at that point, who pretty much, I presented, like I said, suicidal, and I was like, I can't cope, like, I need help.
Yeah.
And, I pretty much got told that, oh, you're just upset because your boyfriend dumped you.
Wow.
That's literally what I was told.
So somebody spoke to you who'd obviously gone to university for between 3 and 4 years.
Yeah, he'd said to me as well, I have 30 odd years of experience, so I know what I'm talking about.
But what do they have experience in? You know, so they've been prejudicial and discriminatory for 30 years. And that's
Yeah. So, yeah.
so there you are. That's wild. Um, so you found
The reason why I had is because I wanted to know what had been written about me.
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Kind of those experiences from the CPN stuff, and then just to actually find out what the fuck.
what the fuck?
was happening.
Hold on, we could think of a live stream that could fit that exact
Yeah.
circumstance.
So that was kind of what spurred that, and I was just absolutely blown away. And then it wasn't until I guess moving on a little bit, sort of a couple of years after that as well, I had another spell of being really unwell, and
Sure.
I then was back in hospital for another couple of weeks, and it was at that point, again, they weren't really going to give me any help, and they were like, "Oh, it's, you're just depressed. Like, here's some antidepressants, on you go." And I'm like, "No, like this. There's something more than this. Like this.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
be going through, all of this and feeling like this, and kind of, like what was going on." And I just felt so like not listened to. And then there was like a talk about BPD. They were like, "Oh well, maybe
That's borderline personality disorder too. Yeah.
we might look at this." And then like they didn't even say what that was, or
I
I'd
mean,
never heard of it.
if that's the first time you've ever heard those words, you'll have no idea.
No, I had no idea. So I then had to go away and then start looking up what that was. And
Because Google is a lovely place to look up BPD, isn't it? It's friendly. It tells you what a great person you are.
it's horrendous. It's awful. It's just negative, and yeah. And then that was just kind of began that sort of cycle there, where it was like I said, it was mentioned, and then that was it. And it was like I then had another CPN at that point, and again it was like it was just. Well, first of all, actually, they kept cancelling my appointments. They kept, and last minute as well, on the day, an hour before or whatever. And I was just like, what is going on? And I just got so fed up. And I ended up actually, I remember it, I ended up getting quite agitated. And because obviously it was also sort of through COVID. And I remember I had an appointment, and it was on like Zoom or whatever it was, or the NHS stuff. And I remember just getting so angry with this person. And
Yeah.
I was just like, you know what, I'm done. And I ended up ending the call. I then got a letter in the door a few days later saying, I'm taking you off my caseload. You're now on the list for psychology. But yeah, I was no longer on their caseload.
So obviously, endings were very important to them and how they dealt with that. So one of the things you touched on before, and again, is that 80% of police call-outs are to do with mental health. So the belief would be that because the police are constantly having to deal with stuff like this, that they become very proficient in supporting people with mental ill health. Are you able to talk about what happened in your situation?
Yeah. So, I had a couple of, I guess, sort of interactions with the police around when I was kind of what I would now, I guess, class as a sort of meltdown, kind of shutdown.
An autistic melt. Yeah.
Autistic sort of meltdown, shutdown type thing. I was. So there was two instances. One where I had been out and stuff, and a member of the public had phoned the police because they were obviously concerned about me because I was really kind of just completely sort of shutting down and
Distressed.
just stressed,
Yeah.
And they then came, and I think at that point I just couldn't get the words to explain how I was feeling. I couldn't
Sure.
get. So, but because I was so distressed, that was then seen. Well, you are obviously a danger to yourself. You may be a danger to other people. They then kind of detained me under the Mental Health Act, and I was like, no, like I was trying to get away because I was like, this is not helping, but I just couldn't get that across. And I then got handcuffed and put into the back of a police van, and I was taken to hospital.
So they pinned you down as well. Is that right?
This was after.
Okay, all right.
After, when I got to the hospital, eventually got to hospital, and they took me in and stuff. They had to stay with me because we had to wait until the sort of psychiatry could come and see me, and I wasn't able to go to the toilet myself. I had to get escorted, and I also I tried to leave the room a couple of times because I felt so stifled. Obviously, from what I understand now, so overwhelmed and overstimulated.
Yeah.
Environment and kind of what was going on, and I had tried to obviously leave that environment, and I wasn't allowed to, and that was then when I was pinned down and basically restrained on the floor.
That's awful. So when you went to the toilet, was that with a female police officer or with the male police officers? And
I can't really remember.
sure,
At
sure.
that point, I think I was just in that much distress. I wouldn't, yeah, I couldn't
Yeah, yeah.
but
But none of this sounds caring.
no, it wasn't. And you know, I mean, it's weird because when I think back now, I'm just, you know, and you know, I feel okay talking about it. But like, obviously, I understand that people listening to that will find that so quite upsetting, actually, and just
Yeah,
like quite
it is.
shocking.
I mean, I think the thing that stood out for us is nobody asked you, how are you feeling?
And then, yeah, there was the other incidents where, again, a similar sort of situation, and I was carried out down the stairs by like 4 or 5 police officers and told to stop being a naughty girl. And
The thing that
yeah,
the
that's
thing that stood out
yeah.
was what the police said to your dad.
Yeah, so then we were at the hospital. Obviously, still quite distressed. You know, that had also, you know, that on top of obviously already being distressed was, you know, was awful. And then, yeah, I was kind of met with further just shit basically from the police. You know, saying I needed to stop being a naughty girl, that I need to sit down. That if I don't, they're going to take me to the cells for the night. And then, yeah, my dad had obviously showed up and was like, you know, is she okay? Where is she? And yeah, the police basically turned around and said, right in front to my dad's face, that she's in there, but to be quite honest with you, she's been a real pain in the arse.
I don't even know where to start with that. You know, so here's a group of people who, according to statistics, are dealing with this sort of thing day in, day out. And if they're dealing with it like that, that's a catastrophe.
Yeah. But I think, you know, I think we'd had a conversation before that had I known back then that I was autistic, ADHD,
Yeah,
had my experience been a lot different.
yeah. So what we were exploring was, it was the lack of service that motivated you to order your medical notes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what the fuck they were writing about.
What the fuck,
Yeah,
indeed.
what was going on? And then, yeah, that was when I then found the lovely, borderline personality disorder as a diagnosis. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting because no one actually told me or even done a proper assessment with me. So, yeah, I feel like
But-
that is just.
But the fact that I mean, even at that point, you'd like to think that a professional or somebody sending this out is saying there's going to be some information in here that's going to rock your world. You know, make sure you're with somebody who loves you or somebody who's got. I don't.
It's not good enough, and it is something that I you know have came across and heard from so many women as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Who, you know, by basically, you know, if you're seen to being, yeah, you're basically framed as being problematic. You know, because you're going into this, you know, you're in that sort of shutdown, that distress. You're seen as being problematic. You're seen as being manipulative. You know, and yeah, you're just then kind of that default then becomes, well, you must have borderline personality disorder because of this is the way that you're acting, and it's wild because, you know, we know that label is so damaging. It is
Yeah,
so
yeah.
negative. And why people feel that it's okay to just chuck that on there without real consideration and ruling anything else out is absolutely beyond me.
So you say your feeling is that you got this diagnosis, and I mean diagnosis in doofus, without an assessment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would appear that they gave you the assessment because you'd pissed them off a bit.
Well,
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's got fuck knows written all over it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we can only speculate. But this is the interesting thing. So, we see this prejudice throughout. We see this stuff going on now. Out of those 5 coppers dragging you down the stairs, was there? And we can only speculate. Was there a leader who said, "This is what we do"? Were his colleagues or their colleagues going, "This seems a bit off"? This doesn't seem very caring. This doesn't seem to be how you treat a human being.
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't that much distressed at that point. I wouldn't even be able to tell you kind of what.
So
All I just remember is those specific words and those that stick with you, because that's not what you expect.
no,
What should be happening.
and you've got your mental health nurse who is looking for a reason, seemingly, to dump you. They talk about iatrogenic harm.
Yeah.
Now, iatrogenic harm is the fancy term for harm done to you by health services. Now, because I've been doing this sort of shit forever, I know that within the definition of iatrogenic harm, it says it's inadvertent harm caused by people, by professionals. Now, my argument would be that inadvertent harm can only happen once, because after that it's verdant, or he says desperately looking for a word. It's a cultural, personal, structural prejudice that's baked into a flawed system.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just the perpetuators of this; it's the people who do fuck all when they see people doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Um,
but at least they gave you therapy after you found out you got PD square. You got your personality disorder label, and no.
No, so it was, it was interesting because it was then kind of like, well, that's what you've got, on you go, get on with it. But they did, they did put me on sort of psychology waiting list, but that took 18 months to actually see anybody. And then I did a couple of, I got kind of one-to-one psychology, which was pointless because we then started kind of getting into trauma, and then they just dumped me in the middle of that. And then I did a couple of group courses, which, was just as wild. And it was just, it was a joke. And then I was then also discharged again after that. But then I ended up back at the system because, things hadn't changed. Like, there's still something, all these unanswered questions. So that is then, at that point, I then kind of started to question other things. I'd done a bit more research. I'd looked at the sort of ADHD, autism, and I was questioning a lot of things at that point. And I had went back and was like, look, this is how I feel. This is kind of what's going on. But, and put me forward, like, I want assessment for this. It took, the GP referred me on. They says, nope, we're not taking you back on.
It just said no.
Yeah. She then referred me again, and he came back and says, no, you don't meet the criteria for this service. You're not getting taken on. And then the third time, the GP was absolutely furious, and apparently had been seeing this quite a lot. And was absolutely furious and was just like, well, we can't, basically says, well, we can't do anything, you need to take charge of this. So they eventually then had a chat with me, but they specifically put on the letter that they would offer me a sort of initial mental health assessment, but this would not be an ADHD or autism assessment. But actually, and to go back, just to add as well, the first letter that they'd sent out to me, they didn't even phone me or anything, they sent me a letter saying they weren't taking me on. And it says, if you need any support, phone Samaritans, phone Breathing Space.
So basically, fuck off.
Basically.
Yeah.
So, so it took all that time, and then put me on this other group, which then came to an end, and I was like, we're still in the same spot as we were,
Yeah.
15 years ago or whatever. And I actually, and I have to admit, this person that I spoke to, one of the psychologists, and I actually, I give her a lot of praise because it was probably the first time in this whole journey that I actually felt that I was listened to and heard.
But you had to get through all these gatekeepers to get to them.
Shit to get to listened to me, and she was like, okay, so why do you think this? Why do you think that? What is, put it all down. She's like, I'll take it to the team, and then she came back and she's like, they have agreed to then put you on the list to be assessed for ADHD and autism. So that would have been.
I'm just thinking, after all that time, your brain would be completely fried.
It was, and I mean, to be fair, like I am tenacious. Like there's no other way to describe that. Like I think, and I think I probably don't give myself enough credit about how strong and actually resilient I actually am. But I was just like, no, like I want these answers. I need these answers.
Yeah, yeah.
No. So that's what I've done. But yeah, so I think I went onto the waiting list around, that was, oh God, July 2023?
Okay.
No, what year?
Don't-
July 2024. It took a good year, basically.
Okay.
Which is, to be fair, is quite not actually that long, considering there's lots of people waiting a hell of a lot longer. But
Especially when no assessments are happening at all in Tayside. That's wild.
but I also think that they bumped me up the list as well because
Yes.
I had been told that if I, whilst I was waiting on this list, that if I needed support, I could phone sort of duty team and speak to someone and get some support, which is
Okay.
what I did at one point because I was struggling. And I phoned and I was then met with, no, you're not with us. You're waiting on this waiting list for this assessment. We can't support you.
Well, because you're on a waiting list, we can't give you support.
Yeah, and then the nurse was horrible that I spoke to. Like, she ended up making me so distressed, and I went into a meltdown and a sort of shutdown, and I was really, really struggling. And I made a complaint about it because it was just unacceptable the way that I was treated.
Do you think this is because they saw personality disorder on?
Well, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that is the reason why.
Fuck a duck.
On the notes. So yes, so I guess just what we were kind of talking about, that actually ADHD is absolutely not overdiagnosed, because to even get to that point for a lot of people and other people that I've spoken to, is an absolute fucking minefield, and traumatic.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases. And you then got to navigate actually, for a lot of women, that misdiagnosis that they're getting thrown at them. So it's more likely actually that ADHD and autism is actually underdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And actually BPD is over applied to women.
I'm so sorry. But where do we start with that, Siobhan?
Yeah, I know it's tough, isn't it? And I think what strikes me as well is the fact that so many women who were initially given that BPD diagnosis actually do later meet that full criteria for ADHD.
I think
autism.
because we've recorded this, I think we share the fuck out of it and get with whichever police forces everywhere, and just keep sharing it, because it is unacceptable. And even
I think just
yeah.
where was that trauma informed response and care?
Yeah. Nowhere.
And there has been all this thing about, regardless of what diagnosis or what you're presenting as or whatever, there's this whole thing about, well, actually, that shouldn't matter. The way that you treat that person and that trauma-informed response and care should come first before anything else.
It's another person. It's a person. It doesn't matter what label they have. It's a person. You've got a distressed person in front of you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's been a hell of a journey, and I'm very aware, Sim, that you've been very quiet throughout this, and I want to
I've just
just
been
say to
listening.
you,
I've just been
I
listening,
don't.
and
How are
thank you
you?
for
How are you doing?
yeah, thanks Siobhan for being so honest and open, and especially on a live like this. I don't think I could be as open and honest as you are. So thank you for even showing it. I think yeah. One thing that Chris touched on earlier, and as I have experienced myself with not necessarily the exact same situations, but similar with healthcare and mental health. At any going back to that uh, evening with the police and the hospital, at any stage, did they not just stop and ask how are you doing? What's going on?
No, I can't ever recall somebody sitting me down and asking me that question.
It's just wild, isn't it? That's wild. But I'm getting the feeling that this has been, if not traumatic, but it's been a real challenge for you, Sim, within this. That just imagining this happening to.
Yeah, I can I I think to think this still is the attitude in services that are meant to be there to help us, to support us, to look after us is um yeah, it's shocking. It's I I I I can relate definitely with what you were saying about school. Yeah, school I
What,
think for anybody who is deemed to be different
or
is tough,
bullied, right?
bullied,
Yeah,
sent out of class,
yeah,
um, taken to a separate facility, and yeah,
But it's a again that's weird, you know that because if they're saying they've got zero tolerance of bullying, and yet when people are bullied, it's I don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand.
no school can say that they've got a zero tolerance.
So right, we got 7 minutes left.
yeah. There was a couple of things I just wanted to share as well. Just and then we had a comment as well that I was going to kind of mention too. But I think just to kind of tie, I suppose, when you're thinking about presentations and misdiagnosis of BPD and ADHD, the obviously thinking about trauma and thinking about, you know, the result of um how yeah, I guess just how kind of people go sort of move through life and kind of how they deal with kind of I guess those situations, and sort of trying to function in sort of those impairments in sort of different areas of their life. What I actually didn't kind of realise is just how much right, so thinking about sort of life expectancies, how when you think about ADHD, how many years of a woman's life expectancy do you think is reduced from having an ADHD diagnosis?
See, I'd never thought equated that with having a shorter life with ADHD, but I imagine it's significant.
So a UK study found that on average, men with ADHD lose 6.78 years of their life expectancy, and it's 8.64 years for women. Loss of life expectancy from a diagnosis of ADHD. And then just kind of going back to what I was trying to say there before about sort of those, you know, BPD and the emotional dysregulation, impulsivity, and the kind of, I guess, that suicidal, ideation kind of stuff, I found that a Danish study indicates those with ADHD are almost 5 times more likely to be suicidal in
Right.
combination with attempts and actually dying by suicide. So knowing all this, to then I guess going through life experiencing trauma, to not being able to access obviously appropriate support and treatment, and this goes for anybody, regardless of what condition or diagnosis. But yeah, to then not have access to appropriate support and treatment for what's going on, like it's just wild.
I don't get it. I don't.
It's wild.
And it's cynical. Politicians scoring points off the back of it. Um,
Yeah.
I'd love.
I guess that comment as well. Sorry, that we got was it's about
Yeah.
actually having so it's better for kind of being able to kind of be more aware and be
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
about your conditions, because actually not having a correct diagnosis is actually more harmful. And then
It is, but it's incredible. But it's incredible. I mean, I don't have the study in front of me, but I know with a BPD, borderline personality disorder diagnosis, you're looking at closer to 20 years being taken off your life. So, I mean, what a mess. So we started a conversation about being overdiagnosed, and we entered into this maelstrom of misdiagnosis and mess. Really, I think we need to be engaging with everybody really, and having conversations. And what do we want from the people listening or watching this?
I want to hear. Yeah, I mean, we have obviously heard a lot of stories, and I have heard a lot of people with similar experiences. But yeah, I want to hear what do people want to see from
Yeah,
here? What are the things that they think would work and would help them navigate kind of? And I guess it doesn't even necessarily need to be about getting a diagnosis, but just support. Like because at the moment, even if you do have a diagnosis, there is no support. So what hope is there for people that can't get a diagnosis but
yeah, yeah,
clearly have a certain condition? So what would work for them? What do they feel they need? Because it's always, as we've said before, it's always about those people out there making the decisions that they mean absolutely fuck all to us. They
yeah.
don't actually translate into real life terms.
And getting the diagnosis, I'm assuming it's kind of life changing that being treated like it and validating perhaps is it?
I think I think for me, I think things finally make sense.
Yeah, yeah,
It has been life changing. It's not been easy. It has been incredibly difficult. It continues to still be incredibly difficult. But I now have this opportunity to be like, well, actually, this is me. This is my struggle. This is what I'm dealing with. But then
yeah, yeah, yeah,
as well, like, and actually, do you know what? If I don't want to be or do something, I don't have to. Or
yeah,
I
yeah.
if I I guess just be able to work with my brain instead of trying to work against it and just do what's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
I
it's
suppose a great understanding. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Um,
been it has been very very life changing but very difficult at the same time.
I, what about you, Sim? What are your thoughts? What do you want?
I wa- hold on. I I'm gonna have to go away and look at like the different areas, because with my I think I made this point last week. Postcode lottery plays a big part in all of this, and I think it would be unfair for us to say this is nationwide with all the like the police forces
Yeah, yeah,
and all the NHS, because there are some incredible police officers. There are some incredible mental health practitioners and nurses, and in the UK. I would love to know, kind of in my area and like also in your area, Chris. Like, is is it kind of similar statistics? And
Yeah, I can very briefly in my area say that I was put on an urgent waiting list, and 2.5 years later, the NHS had done nothing. I was approaching the top of a waiting list, but for some unspecified support. I'm very lucky to be living with a postcode lottery. I live where an organisation called SafeLine provide free counselling for for men who've been sexually abused in childhood, and they were immense. And it's free, and they give you it for a year. Then you have a break for 6 months, and they'll give you another year, and so on and so forth. And there's no judgment. They've got phone support. They've got text support. It's incredible. So I'm very lucky. I know that a lot of people just aren't. I want to know, the things that I want to know is, not all, as you were saying, not all professionals are shit. But I want to know, I want to hear from the professionals who watch this going on and do nothing. And I want to hear, and I'm more than happy for them to be, people don't need to know who they are. If they send something into the show, if they send something into us, we won't say who you are. But why? Is it because you've got a job? Is it because these are your people? Because I know they sure as hell don't teach this at police college. They don't teach this at mental health nursing college. How to be a bastard towards somebody with a label of personality disorder. It's bizarre. It is what it is. So I want to hear I want to hear your experiences. Yeah, but carry on.
But it would also, yeah, I think being able to, I guess, find those pockets that things are working well, because
Yeah.
more of, isn't it? How can we then start to think, well, we need more of that. But it's interesting you're saying about, the kind of fact that, the support that you got there. And it seems to be that it is always these charities out with the NHS that are picking up the slack.
Yeah.
And that in itself is absolutely baffling as well. But I think that's probably a conversation for
I think so.
time.
I mean, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, guys. I really appreciate it. Next week, if I've got anything to do with it, we're going to be talking kind of about ableism, and a bit of homework. Look up the ugly laws, which are laws that they had in the United States up until the mid-70s. They didn't call them the ugly laws, but if you look up on Wikipedia, it was against the law for people to go out and present in a way that was upsetting to other people. And that included people who were, like myself, a bit clonkers, people who were disabled, people who just behave in different ways, homeless people. So they actually had laws prohibiting people being. And I've just got this feeling that we're sort of gradually edging towards those attitudes in this sadly toxic and ableist world that we're finding ourselves in. Comments all over the place, please. You know where we are. I'd love to hear from you. And please join us next time. I've been Chris Young. Who have you guys been?
Evan Schwan.
Evan Sim.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to say goodbye for now. Bye for now.